Yes, once again, welcome to the Daily Huddle. I'm your host, Dr. Monica Ogando. We're talking about how can human design accelerate your spiritual journey. And some of you may be new to the conversation about spiritual design, human design. And so I'm going to give you some basics about it. And then if you want to learn further and you want to learn more and take that up as your own journey, then you're welcome to. I'll give you some resources to do so. So the first thing that I want you to know is that human design is a system that combines astrology, the I Ching, the Kabbalah, and the chakra system, and in some ways, quantum physics. So it offers a blueprint for your energetic makeup and how you're designed in how you interact with the world. So it provides some insights into your whatever challenges or strengths you may be experiencing about yourself. There are some things that you're naturally inclined for. There are some things that you're not naturally inclined for, and sometimes you have to force yourself or will yourself to do so. And these tips and strategies can help you navigate life with, greater ease, greater authenticity even, so that you can really own the pieces of you that are really powerful. And then the things that aren't powerful for you, you can forgive yourself for and let yourself off the hook for, and, align yourself with folks for whom that is a strength, so that the dynamic of the relationship can strengthen the both of you. So in human design, there are 5 main types. Think of it as any kind of personality assessment, you have typically 4 things. And so the quadrant framework is very popular among assessment archetypes and things like that. But in human design, there are 5. There are the manifestors, and the manifestors are those who are the initiators, and they're here to bring new things into the world. They're just the idea, people. Then you have the generators. And in some ways, the manifesting generators are kind of like a blend, because they're the builders who generate the energy to manifest those things in the world and sustain the life force. The manifesting generators are kind of a hybrid between manifestors and generators, because you have the vision and also the will to make it happen. And then you have projectors. Projectors are the guides who understand others, are kind of empaths, right? And they can help direct the energy of the people that they serve. And then the reflectors, as the name suggests, are mirrors who reflect the environment and community, and then they offer perspective, because they can it's kind of like a prism that directs all that light and reflects the light around them. So then the other thing that I want you to know about human design is that it talks a lot about your strategy and your authority. So your strategy is how you best navigate decisions. In other words, how you can come to your own sense of clarity, and your authority is where you get the fuel for your decision-making process. So, for example, some examples of authority are your sacral authority. And sacral, as you know from work that we've done here in the past, is where your emotional center resides. So if you get a gut feeling, it's very primal, it's very instinctual. So sometimes you get a gut feeling that says, yeah, no, mm-mm. And then you get a yes, and you're like, right. And so it's almost like the and the that a child, a toddler, an infant would understand, right? It's not based on logic, it's not based on complex thinking strategies. And the authority could be something like, and the strategy could be something like waiting to respond. Waiting to respond means you don't just start pulling ideas out of your behind. You read the room, right? And you see what's wanted, and you navigate and you respond to what's wanted, and not necessarily because you invented, like, this is what I should do. Sometimes we operate from the shoulds, so much so that we tend to kind of complicate life for ourselves. It's like, you're making that up, right? There are also 9 centers in the human design chart that are similar to the chakras, and each one represents different aspects of life, such as communication and identity, intuition, and power. There are defined centers. If you go to, for example, Jovian Archive, this is the first resource I'll give you, jovianarchive.com. Somebody please write it down in the chat. And when you go there and you see a human design chart, you can enter like your birth time, date, and place, and it gives you your human design chart. There are some centers that are colored in, right? And those that are colored in that have some color, blue, yellow, whatever, those are defined centers, which means that they're consistent energies in your life. And the undefined centers, the ones that are in white, that are blank, are areas of, sensitivity and potential wisdom because you're more open. So sometimes the defined centers are called closed centers and the undefined are called open. And some of the ways in which human design can truly accelerate your spiritual growth, number one, is by self-awareness. So by understanding your type, your design, you gain deeper sense of self-awareness, and you can align with your true nature. You reduce resistance and you reduce internal conflict. Another way is by when you know your strategy, when you know your authority, it helps you to make decisions that are more in alignment with your higher self, leading you to more fulfilling outcomes. It also helps you to decondition from societal or familial pressures or expectations because you embrace more who you truly are and you live more authentically. And the fourth thing that I'll say about that is that when you live in alignment with who you truly are, and human design helps you to clarify that, you naturally attract the right opportunities, the relationships, the experiences, accelerating your spiritual growth. And I'm going to say this about the people who raised you, the people who you grew up around, were probably operating from a place of survival. And in survival, you do what you have to do. It's not about what you're good at. It's not about what aligns with your soul. we're we're not there yet. We're just trying to get our neck above water, right? And so some of these alignment conversations presuppose that you've handled your survival, whether it's economically or emotional, safety, et cetera, et cetera. Some of these things are not available to you. Some of these decisions are not available to you until you have handled the survival conversation. So when someone lives in survival and is used to it, and in this society, we actually celebrate the survival culture of just making it and just hustling and just spending yourself and overworking and super productive as though you were some kind of cog in a wheel of whose what purpose we don't know, right? And so this invisible goal that we're always getting into. And so the idea that you are not here to survive, that you're here to live in alignment with your true purpose sounds privileged, sounds entitled. It sounds woo-woo, as some people might dismiss it. It sounds maybe even disconnected from reality, right? And so I want to point that out to you because as you are exploring these things, you may be getting some inner voice stuff that's really the remnants of societal pressure or the things that you listened to growing up, the messages that you had growing up in your culture, in your family, in your neighborhood, in your circle of friends, et cetera, et cetera. So just pay attention to that. And then in terms of like, okay, so what do I do with this? How do I move forward? If I want to learn more, what do I do? Where do I start? And the first thing that I'll say is, first learn what your human design type and strategy are. Begin experimenting with it in your day-to-day life so that you can see how it feels. So again, you can go to Jovian. It's what is it spelled like? www.jovianarchive.com. Jovianarchive.com. And you can actually get your human design chart there free. And when you get it, it might look like a whole bunch of numbers and colors and shapes. Some are squares, some are triangles. Like, what does this all mean? Spend some time just looking at it. Just let it visually stimulate you. There are some wisdoms and some knowledge and some discernment internally that you have that your conscious mind, your logic, your reason won't let you see because it doesn't make sense. But there are multiple intelligences that we have access to. If you put your conscious mind or your reasoning mind aside for a second, you know, you don't have to let it go completely, but if you let it go for a second and allow yourself to be visually stimulated, to hear what's being downloaded, then you can begin to discern some patterns around that. And so, and then of course, every time that you have a question about something, call ChatGPT, call Google, call, you know, your favorite search engine and ask questions so that you can learn more about what are the centers, what are the gates, what are the channels, what does that even mean? How do I use this? Each part of the chart offers you more insights into your life purpose and your spiritual journey. So explore those things, journal on those things, ask those questions. And the deconditioning process, deconditioning yourself from societal or familial pressures or cultural forays and mores, it's a gradual process. You didn't become indoctrinated into this way of thinking overnight, and it's not going to decondition overnight. So it involves letting go of who you think you should be and embracing who you are. And then, by all means, connect with a human design expert, get a reading, get an in-depth understanding, consider working with a human design coach or analyst so that you can better leverage these tools and with your own personal experience, you can discern what's the best way that works for you. So Michelle says, I have no information about birth time or only date. Okay, start with that. Start with that and then move forward. So, has anybody here heard of human design? Are you familiar with it? Put a 1 in the chat if you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Put a 2 in the chat if you're like, I'm slightly familiar, but I don't really know. And then that way we know where to take the conversation. So 1, if you're like, no idea, completely new, regular schmegular. And 2 is like, I've heard of it, but I don't really know much about it. Okay, we have a couple of 1s. Great. All right. So then, you know, this is an opportunity for you to really get clear on 1, if it even resonates. Because the reason I started researching human design was because when somebody said what it is and defined it for me and then told me about certain tools, I was like, ooh, that sounds interesting. So the ooh was a clue that this was a tool that would resonate with me, and it piqued my curiosity enough for me to go down that rabbit hole and learn some things. So if that's you, then by all means go to Jovian and start just kind of like, you know, exploring things. So what questions, what commentary do you have about this? Anybody? Questions, comments? Anything? Chase says it's intriguing. Oh, thank you, Chase. Thank you, darling. What else?
I'd just like to know more. So I'm going to check it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really a cool system because again, it's a hybrid of, like I said, so many multiple um wisdom teachings, the I Ching, quantum physics, astrology, numerology, etc. So I find it really fascinating myself. All right, what else? Who else? Mm-mm, mm-mm. I mean, we could be done early. I know we're famous for running over time, but if you're complete, I'm complete, child, and we could be released. Anybody else have any questions?
I'm I'm just going to check it out. That's what I'm going to do.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So here's another resource that I want to give you. Let me go look it up to make sure that I'm spelling it correctly. Let me see. Yeah. So my friend Asha, the website for her is Asha is Now, and she wrote a book called Your Soul Map. Your Soul Map: Liberation, Human Design, and the BIPOC Experience. And I'm going to put a link to it on Amazon in the chat as well, so that you can go check it out. The reason why I recommend that book is because, to be fair, the human design framework was created by a cis-het white man. And that doesn't mean that it's wrong or bad. It just means that you as a critical thinker just need to know that whoever writes anything has their particular perspective, their particular angle on something. Not that it's wrong, but it's a unique perspective. And it sometimes does not include perspectives from other angles, experiences, cultures, et cetera, particularly when it's a white person, particularly when it's a white man. So I always recommend your soul map liberation experience and the BIPOC experience, because it offers you a broader perspective into these things. Just kind of like an addition to it. Florence, you've raised your hand. Yes, my love.
Yes, I have been given another presentation, so I was unable to come in here at the beginning, so I'm not so sure what your topic is. But I would like to say, when it comes to the perspective, I'm a real student of the Bible, and the other day I was reading the Bible, and I just stopped. I just got upset because I was reading one of these old scripture, Old Testament books, and then I came to this place where, oh, they went into this place, and they conquered this place, and they took the heads of the four kings, and they hung their heads on the posts and for everyone to see, and all of this, meaning, they decapitated the people, the kings, and hung their heads, and I stopped, and I'm like, God did this. Is not God. This is not the God that I know, that sanctioned all of this. This is just somebody's thing. Like, this is their culture. And, so then, because when you speak to some people, they say, what kind of God is this of love and allowed all of this kind of these things to be done and all of this? And I'm like, a lot of what's written in this book is somebody's perspective. And so I totally agree with what you said there just now. And I just stopped. But I am aware that there are principles there, that the divine principle, you can find it in there. You can find the wisdom that you need. However, it's not just plain for the eye to see. And there's this thing that says, let him that has eyes see, and let him that had ears hear. So, which means it's not just these two herbs in your head or the ears. They're talking about your spiritual eyes, ears, your discernment, all of this. And you have to just key into source, and you would be given, I guess, the understanding that you need of these words that are written there. So with that, I'm complete.
Yeah, thank you for that. I can relate to what you're saying, Florence, because for many years, when I considered the Bible a literal and unquestionable word of God, when I was in that position, it became very triggering, because again, it made me confront a lot of, and it made me audit a lot of my assumptions, like what kind of God would do this, and the third. When I understood that the Bible is a metaphysical document, it is not a historical document, then I can understand the symbology. Then it makes sense that somebody would decapitate a king, because it wasn't cutting off the head of a human being. It was deleting the consciousness that particular ruling consciousness represented.
Exactly.
So when I can understand it from a metaphysical and a symbological standpoint, then those things start making more sense to me. So I understand what you're saying completely.
Yes. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Who else has something to share? I wanna go ahead.
I just want to say also that that in that metaphysical way, I realized, okay, you will like when the Bible talks about your enemies and your enemies and your enemies, and I have come to see enemies, like even your enemies could be your thoughts, like the negative thoughts that persist in your head that keep you bound in certain ways. They can be your enemies because they're not contributing. These negative thoughts and these things, they're not contributing to your life like positively. So I saw in the Lord in the Lord's Prayer, the 23rd Psalm, you will in the midst of your enemies, you will flourish, something, to that effect. I'm like, yeah, even when sometimes I have negative thoughts or negative whatever it is, still I can flourish in the midst of these enemies because it all is not lost. I mean, I can triumph over these thoughts and so forth. So instead of, enemies as somebody who did me wrong, the next door neighbor or somebody else, enemies as just even my thoughts.
Yes.
And I'm coming to really understand things like that.
Absolutely. When you are a consciousness instead of a personality, then the adversarial consciousness is what would be an enemy, right? And to your point, even there's another verse in the Bible that says you lay a table before my enemies, right? And so, yeah, when you are in a position of adhering and aligning to the truth with a capital T, I suppose, or the truth of who you are, the divine truth of who you are, then these competing thoughts can't do nothing but sit back because you've released the power that they had were your belief in them. And when you take that from them, then they have no power in and of themselves, which is why in Egyptian mysticism it says that Set, which represents the ego, was an impotent god. It's not that he was a god, and it's not impotent in the sense of sexual power. It's sexual power in the sense of creation. So those adversarial thoughts, those competing thoughts, the thoughts that are not aligned with the truth of who you are don't have any power in and of themselves except that which you lend them through your belief. So thank you for saying that. Awesome sauce. All right, everybody. Anybody else have a comment, question, grievance, concern? I'm in a different place right now. I'm in my living room right now. So it's not the office. It's not the blank office background that you typically see. Anybody else? Comment, question?
I'll get to the DNC. Apparently that's not longer. It's a lot to take in.
It is, right? That's why I gave you that Jovian thing, because you might need some time to go through the down the rabbit hole. So awesome. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for being here. Remember, of course, love your neighbor, love yourself, give of your time, energy, and attention. Be generous with it. Exercise, move your tail feather. Remember that twerking is a Kundalini raising spiritual practice. Eat more plant-based, stress less, at least 7 or 8 hours of sleep every night. If you're feminine holding body, make it 9. Feminine holding bodies need more sleep because we hold more energy. And then, of course, as always, audit your assumptions. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. Your assumptions anticipate your reality. Love you, everybody. See you next time.
Thank you, Doc.
Thanks, everybody.